Joseph. And in Proverbs, it tells us about be careful of individuals with sweet voices, because in the end, it leads you down a path of destruction. So now Joseph and Potiphar's wife are together with one another, and then all of a sudden Potiphar's wife tries to advance on Joseph, man of integrity, doesn't take on heed her advance, and then all of a sudden he runs out of there and leaves his coat. And so she gets the other slaves in the house to come up with this lie that Joseph tried to have his way with her, and that he had ran out of there because he was going to get caught. He ends up in prison, and while in prison, there are two men in there who end up meeting him and find out that he is able to interpret dreams. One of them is put back in the baker, is put back into the house. The other one is killed, as Joseph told both of them would happen. And then ends up having a dream, and Joseph ends up still in prison because they forgot about the baker forgot about Joseph once he got out. But Joseph still, in the midst of his suffering, still recognizes who God is and what God can do, and never complains about any of it. He never tries to do anything about it. And then all of a sudden has a dream, and nobody can interpret it. And then that's when the baker remembers Joseph and tells him about Joseph. They get Joseph. Joseph comes down. Joseph interprets the dream, puts Joseph as second in command, only under him, and he was supposed to make sure that they did not run out of their supply. God has a way of elevating us, even in the midst of our suffering or pain. Usually when pain and suffering comes in the life of a believer, well, then elevation is coming somewhere. It's just a matter of us holding on and holding out until the elevation comes. What usually happens at times is that the individual will become discouraged and immediately leave, go somewhere else, or stop so that the suffering will stop. But yet still we have Joseph here who is still in prison, but yet still trusting and believing in God. Steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the works of the Lord, knowing that our labor is not in him. And it's not that every individual at one time or another has almost given up, because life can become so hard and so detrimental at times. But yet still, instead of giving up, you just continue to hold on, knowing that tomorrow's a new day. And then all of a sudden, God, you have to remember, God also said that he'll never put any more on us than we can bear. And he's true to his word. But our ways are not his ways. But he's always time in whatever he does. Regardless of how bad it gets, he's still right there with us. Lo, I'll be with you always, even until the end of the ages. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And so he's still right there, still offering favor. Even in the midst of when we can't see favor, we have favor. And then God is still setting you up for favor. So now we have Joseph. Joseph becomes second in command. Only person over him is the Pharaoh. He's doing everything that he's supposed to do. Egypt is ready. Egypt is prospering. And now the famine hits. And people are coming from all over to Egypt, because now Egypt is the only one who had prepared himself for this famine that was to come. So every other nation would have to come to Egypt and bargain with Egypt in order to get the supplies that they need. And then among them ends up being Joseph's brothers, the 10 brothers. We have Benjamin, who was still, but the father would not allow Benjamin to go. So he only sent the 10 brothers. Isn't it amazing? God places only the individuals who were responsible for what happened to Joseph in Joseph's past. So let's get into 42 verses It says 3 to 5, but let's go with verse 1 all the way to verse 5.
I'll read it, but I'll be reading from a different version in my Bible. It'll be the NLT.
Let's go all the way to verse 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. It says, when Jacob heard that grain was available in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you standing around looking at one another? I've heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough grain to keep us alive. Otherwise, we'll die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain. But Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother Benjamin go with him, for fear some harm might come to him. So Jacob's sons arrived in Egypt for the family in the as well. Joseph was governor of all Egypt and in charge of selling grain to all the people. It was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where are you from?" he demanded. "From the land of Canaan," they replied. "We have come to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. He said to 8.
Keep on going to 10.
Okay. He remembered the dreams he had about them many years before. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become." "No, my lord," they exclaimed. "Your sons have simply come to buy food."
All right. So here we have Joseph. Joseph is prospering. Whatever Joseph needs, Joseph can get. He's in charge of everything. Every individual who came had to come through Joseph. It didn't matter what king it was, who they sent was that came to get something to eat. They had to come to Joseph because Joseph was in charge of all of the grain, all of the food that an individual could get. So here comes Jacob sending his sons to Joseph, and the sons don't even know that that's their brother.
But their brother knows.
Yeah. The brother knew because he remembered them. Sometimes the individual who do something, you may forget who you are, but you'll remember who they are. And the beauty of this is that Joseph, even in the midst of that, because you see how it starts out, they say that Joseph started out speaking harshly to them. Like, y'all done sold me into slavery and now y'all come. So Joseph ends the end of them. But at first he speaks rough to them because he knows exactly even with just automatically forgive. And it takes us a minute to work through the process, and then we find individuals have that ability to just turn the other cheek and they okay. But then you have others that it takes a while, and God has to intervene and begin to change their heart to where they're finally able to forgive the individual. It says, if I have a arch against my brother, I'm gonna go to my brother, and we're supposed to talk it out. But if we can't, then we have to go get 2 or 3 other individuals. And then if those the 3 individuals are still in that way, then we got to take it before the church. So even with that, God knows that there's a process that individuals have to go through. When you look at Peter, Peter asked the Lord, "How many times should I forgive? 7?" And he thought he was really doing something. 7 days. He said, "No, 77 times 7." That if this individual does something to you, you can forgive them for it because it's not on them, but it's on you. You end up trapped in your own mind because every time you see that individual, it triggers. But if you have the ability to forgive, then it doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother you when you see them. It doesn't bother you when you talk to them. It does not bother you. It doesn't mean that you have to start hanging around them and everything again. But it's, I forgive you for whatever you've done. You know, we're not going to hang around like we used to, but I forgive you for what you've done. Because I'm not going to have that. Yeah, in my heart, are you owning a place in my mind? Rent free, yeah, rent free place. So we got something living rent free. So I'm gonna forgive you, and I'm gonna go ahead and move on. And then sometimes we just outgrow stuff. Individual may be jealous or upset, just like Joseph's brother did. That was jealousy and hatred that both festered up. But the hatred festered up first is jealousy. They got jealous because Joseph had a robe that his father gave him, and then he turned around and told them that one day you would bow before me. And those two things right there caused jealousy to rise up in them to the point to where then they started talking about we're gonna kill him. And then they didn't even talk about him in the context of being their brother anymore. He was just a guy who the father had slept with his mother. But that's the trip that jealousy and envy can take an individual on. An individual can find himself lost or lose himself. There's so many individuals who have done things that they say, man, if I could just take that moment back. Because all it takes is just a moment to mess up an individual's entire life. All it took was for them a moment to give Joseph, sell him into slavery. He's on his way to Egypt. Reuben comes in. Reuben says, where's our brother at? They tell him they done sold him into Egypt. Reuben does not go to try to get his brother back. Reuben just says, well, y'all wrong for that. Now what are we going to do? Well, we'll say that he was killed, and Reuben goes along with it. Yeah. But what you need what he has, not knowing it's him.
Oh, they're gonna pay for it. It's
Yeah, yeah. But God has a way of setting you up and somebody else up to where you end up blessing the very person who did something to you. We said all the time, David, thou prepared the table for me in the presence of my enemy. It doesn't say that he's not going to feed his enemy. It just says you prepare the table before me in the presence of my enemy. I have choice of whether I want my enemy to come eat with me or I want them to stay away from me. But I have choice in the matter. But it's God who prepares the table in the presence of them. So where they're saying that you're being blessed and they're naming all this stuff that as to why you're a con artist, you're doing all this stuff, and then finally they come to the deal and say, man, God just has his hand on it. Because God keeps on blessing. All right. And so the brothers now come down to Egypt and they encounter Joseph. And the background is that Joseph now is speaking in the Egyptian language. He no longer is speaking in the Hebrewic language because simple fact he's now over Egypt. And so he has an interpreter who interprets for him what the people from other lands would say, and he would just speak to them in the Egyptian language. But so when the brothers come, not only is Joseph, they can't, not only can they not understand that it's Joseph, but Joseph is now speaking in the Egyptian language. And when the brothers hear, and they're speaking in Hebrew. And so what y'all, so the interpreter is interpreting, Joseph is understanding everything that they can say. That's the same thing as an individual being somebody talking about Joseph. Joseph is able to understand what they're saying to one another. What's that? I'm trying to get to that one where it talks about. And they said to him, "No, my Lord," but verse 10, "but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's son. We are honest men. Our see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "Your servants are 12." And so it's this conversation that's going on with Joseph and them that really that is interpreting what's been said between them. And so now, Joseph's brothers now are really in a state of trying to appease a brother that at one time or another they wouldn't have had to appease. As they are, all they have to do is say, "Give us what we want," but yet still they don't know who it is, and 20 years has gone by. With them, he's testing them as to what they are. And I wish I had my book because it talks about the interpretation of the interpreter, and it brings in the book brings in the interpreter. Let me see. Okay, it goes up at the very top. Joseph's time as a slave and the false charges that were put him in the Egyptian prison has been wasted. Those years of the Egyptian language custom. So Joseph now knows their language. He knows he knows the customs of them, and so now he's at that point to where he has an interpreter also who interprets for him what other individuals are saying, because now Joseph is not speaking in any language other than the Egyptian language because he is now prominent in the Egyptian culture. So so at that time it would have been strange to have an individual from another um, race of people. So Joseph just basically blended in with them. Yes, Joseph basically just blended in with the Egyptians, and I'm trying to get to it. Page 144. If they if they heard Joseph speak their Hebrew language, they would have heard a man speaking a foreign language as an Egyptian noble. It is both comforting and awesome and inspiring to realize that God moved history forward to perform His works. So Joseph is speaking in Egyptian, and yet still there was another individual who was interpreting, but he can understand. God will set us up just like He did Moses. Moses is being raised in the Pharaoh's house, but yet still Moses is a Hebrew. And somewhere along the way, Moses realized he is not an Egyptian. Moses realizes he's a Hebrew. That's how Moses ends up killing an Egyptian, a Hebrew. When you find out and discover who you are, then it's hard for you to live an identity. When we talk about Colin Kaepernick his story, he could live that life that they was trying to get him to live. Once he found out that no, this is my true history, embrace his history. Individuals had problems with it, but at the same time, he said, "This is my identity. Who I really am." For us as Christians, we can't go out and live with other individuals because it's just not who we are.
It's not. It don't feel the same.
It doesn't.
You can't put yourself in old positions that you used to be in when you are living a Christian life. Like your body and your spirit don't sit.
There should be some issues you have when you're in places that God's not at. And there are places, when I say places that God's not at, I'm talking about, we know God is in, but there are places that God just does not operate fully in. Because it's simply, when you talk about places with Babylon, he turns around and has Babylon taken out by the Persians. Assyria. He has the Assyrians take out the Assyrians. Because said that while he was there, he said that there was nothing that happened because of their unbelief. So there are times that God is not able, and it's not that, but He with us in the of crazy situations, and we're asking God to do something, and He's saying, "I told y'all, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and forgive their sins and heal their land." Because it has to be an atmosphere that God is able to operate in. Even when we look at it, it said that He was the light and He came in the midst of darkness, and darkness comprehended Him not. But He was able to bring light into the darkness. So God has the ability to operate in the world, but in all situations, God doesn't operate because of the simple fact some things that He just will not do that breaks who He is. Who one sort the people are worshiping in the temple, and finally found out God wasn't even in the temple anymore. God had left the temple 6 months ago. They told y'all worship bulls and calves and rituals going, and God's not even here. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Y'all have been so disobedient that God just decided He was going to leave. But because y'all were doing the rituals and stuff, y'all thought that God was still there. The prayer here, the Lord walk in here and feel not your presence nor your power. Please, every individual who comes in here, let them be able to feel your presence and your power, because it's not us, but it's you who own this house. Don't ever take your spirit away from here. Don't ever take your spirit. God honors that. Joseph's brothers them are standing before him in his presence, and he's talking harshly to them because of the simple fact of what they did to him. So, but no, he was when it first. I'm in a position now, but y'all sold me into slavery. And then not only did y'all sell me into slavery, but then y'all took me away from my father, my mother, my other younger brother, Benjamin. I don't know nothing about them. No, didn't come look. But at the same time, now you stand before me. And the dream that I had is being fulfilled, because now all of y'all are having to bow down before me. And I told y'all would have to bow me in the dream. He told them that they would told Jacob would bow down before him. And Jacob sends them as a representative of him, and they have to bow down to him. So dream fulfilled. Any questions or comments? Let's look at verse 8. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not, which he had dreamed about them, and said to them, "Are you spies? You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants are come to buy food. We are one man." And so he takes him on this deal. Remember, they had him in a he's taunting them. He's taunting just like he was getting them. They begging him now because they know we done messed up. They don't know why, but they know something is different. Let's go ahead and look at 42:21 to 24. Somebody read that.
It says they said to each other, obviously we're being punished for what we did to our brother. We saw his deeds when he pleaded with us, but we listened. This is why this comes to us. Reuben replied, didn't I tell you not to harm the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must account for his blood. They did not realize that Joseph understood this, since there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them and wept.
Okay, and keep on going.
The next
Yes.
45, 1 through 5. Joseph could no longer keep his of all his attendants, so he called out, send everyone away from me. No one was with him when he revealed his identity to his brothers, but he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and also Pharaoh's household heard it. Joseph said, is my father still living? But they could not answer him because they were terrified in his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come near me. And they came near me. I am Joseph, your brother, he said, the one you sold into Egypt. And now you selling me here because God sent me ahead of you to serve your life.
All right then. And so here we have Joseph. He's talking harsh to them. Then he throws them all in prison. Yeah. He throws them all in prison 3 days. We know 3 days. Uh, Christ resurrected after 3 days. But they're in prison for 3 days. And now they're having, and it comes to their mind, it's because of what we did. We're reaping what we sowed. We said all the time, you can think that you got by, but you didn't get away. Whatever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Way I know. But they turned, and with 20 years done gone by, it pops in their mind, dear our brother. Forgetting that they sold into Egypt, ain't said nothing about Egypt, ain't said nothing about any of that. All they saying is that, man, we messed up and did this. And Reuben, the brother, oldest brother, turns around and tells, I told y'all not to do it. We're in this predicament because of what y'all did.
He could have told the truth, though.
But Reuben, at that time right there, Reuben was not his brother's keeper. Reuben could have went after the caravan that they sold him with. He could have got the money back that they bought him with. They should have took it back to the slave traders and told them, no, we got our brother back. He could have did that. But he didn't do that. He went along with it. It's like I was talking about Sunday. That's who did that. And all of us, we know who did it. But all of us are sticking together. Everybody should get away now. He did it. And so Reuben's with all of them. Hey, it's nothing that I can do. I'm not going to fall out with my brothers behind this. Because I kind of didn't like him anyway myself. We had all this favorite his among him, the favorite coat, and all that. So even though I don't agree, I'm not going to fall out with everybody else. And that's a bad place to be in. Because now, can you imagine what Ruben lived with? Well, he may have good for 20 years. He may have just been like days in the belly of the whale. He turned around and turned himself around. Now 3 days in the tomb. Now we got 3 days here. We're in a prison, and then finally come to the realization self to where they acknowledged and confessed the sin that they committed. And they say this is possibly the first time in the 20 that they did that, they have possibly talked about this among themselves and acknowledged that they were wrong. Because most they did was cut up the Tobias deal, put some goat blood on it, and say, hey, Daddy, we went back and he was just done. And then probably, most likely, went on about their business. But now, 20 years later, when you got 3 days, yeah. When you're in that cell and hours ain't going to hours go to. Honestly, it's hours. They put me in. I got out at 4:30, and I feel like I was in there I couldn't wait. And it's 5 minutes from the last time that you asked me what time it was.
It ain't no clock.
They have what's called Collin County. They have a clock. It broke.
We got the screen on the phone.
Well, in Collin County, they got a clock on the wall, and the hands are broke. So the hands don't move. And so you have one of the guards, what time it is, and they ain't telling you nothing.
That's it. Good luck with that.
Yeah, they not telling you anything. Only time they're gonna tell you is when it was time for them to count us, and when it was morning, and then when they brought us our food, and we just lost track of time.
That's how you know the time when the food brought it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. I was just lost. But it was the longest amount of time that I said, I'll never want to do this again. And then it's not like you can go, it wasn't like you could just go and lay on a bed or something. Like we was in the process, you got to sit up in a chair. And you can't stretch out across no chairs. You raise. Yeah. Yeah, because you ain't getting no blankets and you're there because you being processed. And I'm like, man, I said, So can you imagine 3 days of that? All kind of stuff is going through your mind. How did I get here? And finally, they just came, all of them in there, and no, we messed up when we did that. And Ruben finally got to tell them that I told y'all that we shouldn't have did that. And here's Joseph, who, even though he has an interpreter, understands what they say. And it is the belief that is what melted his. Remember, he was talking. Then he's hearing them in his voice. The interpreter does not have to interpret it to us. He hears them. And finally, they begin to talk and tell about what happened. We shouldn't have did that. And then that's when he finds out that Reuben did not know anything about it. because it is believed that the oldest would have been the one that they would have kept in prison. But they turn around and he lets Reuben go and keeps one of the other ones because he finds out that Reuben's not the one who did that. He sent all of them back except one of them and told the rest. But he back and told them that now y'all go get your brother if you want him to come. If you got another brother, bring him. Now if y'all bring him, then we'll know that y'all aren't spies. But if he don't come back, somebody's gonna die. And so now they have to go back to the father who the last time he sent them out one of his son didn't come back. And now they have to go to the father and tell him to trust them that they'll bring his other son back, which is the last one. So if he lose him, Jacob ain't gonna be no good. That's why Jacob goes into this. They have benched Jacob, and then Reuben begins to speak up and tell him, "No, I'll make sure he comes back, but don't bring him." And he's gonna go ahead and kill the other brother, and we already done lost one brother. You can think you can get away, but you won't get away long. God needs to come back because grace still is here. Because he turns around and tells that, man, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been in a position to do what I needed to do for this family and for our people. Because of this, not only is the family being saved, but the whole people of Israel are being saved. There's going to be over 1 million individuals march into Egypt and start living in Egypt based on Joseph. The book of Exodus, they say Pharaoh came along. So that's the reason why Israel ended up, and they say Israel multiplied so fast that they said, man, they're going to eventually be able to overtake us. Yes. Yes. It's God's will. That's why Joseph turns around and said, God had already sent me ahead of y'all. So don't beat yourself up. Because at first, that's why I say he went from harshness to talking to them after he recognized who they was, to them being in prison and confessing what they did and saying that this is really the reason that it's happening. But that's really what melted his heart, was when they finally confessed that what they did was wrong, and Reuben tried to, and he never knew that Reuben, the older brother, tried to stop them. And then finally, he says, "Go get the father of them," and then he reveals himself to them. So everything with God is a process, but God's will be done. Because you think about it, if it had not been for this, then Israel possibly not have made it, because Egypt had so much rain because of the interpretation of Joseph, that Joseph told them that we need to step up. We stock stuff up, so Joseph them had all this surplus, and if it had not, but because of what God did, God prepared it. And just think about this: all of this is being done because of what God told Abraham when He told him to come out of his father's land. All this is being done because of that. anything connected to Abraham, God was making sure continue to move on in the direction of the kingdom that God told Abraham that He's going to bless him with. They were going to be a blessed people, and God watched out for them. Remember when Abram and Sarah went into Canaan the first time, and the king married Abram's wife, but never could do anything with her, and then finally God told him, "Man, you got to marry this man's wife." And then he comes back and tells Abram, "Why didn't you tell me that was your?" And so Abram, and really Abraham ends up doing 430 years in captivity because of the lies that he was telling, instead of just being honest with him. 30 years in captivity in consequence of the lies that Abram told. So they blessed in going into Egypt, but they also consequence. For 430 years, they're under the oppression of the Egyptians. Because that's Pharaoh that does not know Joseph that comes along. All right. So now we're into this 45 1 to 5. As we get ready to close. Joseph can't contain himself and he wanted forgiveness. He's forgiven his brothers for what they've done. And he goes ahead and tells them who he is. And then it says that he cries so loud that even the house guards could hear him. The people in his household could hear him because he was crying so hard. He went around and asked them, "Okay, what are my father and my brother?" And but at first they won't say anything because they're like, "Oh man, we done messed up. Now he done revealed to us who he is." But that's the God love of a God that he can forgive. The reason that I'm here is because God will set it up for all of us. Verse 45. Verse 3. Then Joseph said to his brothers, his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said, "Please come near to me." So that they came near. And he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourself. You sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. I had been in the land, and there was still 5 years in which there was to be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in this land, and to save your life. Not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his houses, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." And that goes back to what Dennis was talking about. God's will be done. His perfect will be done. Listen to how Joseph lays out the process. Y'all didn't do all this right here. God did this. It was God's will. Now, it wasn't his will for y'all to sell, but based on what y'all did, God has willed that my perseverance be there. We can't. God's will is never for us to participate in evil, but we just know He turns it. All things work out for His good. We can do something evil, and God can turn it to where it works out for His good. Joseph was able to say, "You know what? Y'all did this, but God still worked it to where all of us are benefiting from what y'all did. So don't be with yourself. God knew you were going to do it before you did it, and already had a plan on what He was going to do when you did it. We have free will, and God knows what we're going to do, and He turns before we do it, and He turns what we do wrongly into something that will be right for Him within the confines of His will. So that's the reason why Cain's brother killed Cain's brother killed again and tried to have the grace of God. And God was like, no. I excused Cain the first time, but now you got to come around, you killing people. God thought he was going to take the worst situation and turn it into His will. Because nothing can happen down here unless God allows it to. If God allows it to, He has plans for it to turn out. And we know that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are the called into His purpose. Amen. Any comments? Okay. Brother Klaus, if you can pray us out.
Goodness. Some things happen. Dad, I got you.
Amen. Amen.
Pray.
Pray for Brother Norris.
Yes. Most gracious Father, I come to you in the name of your Son. We thank you for sick, no fear. We thank you for Brother Morris. We ask you to touch his body the way you will please. Help him to understand that your will be done. Ask you to bless us. Bless him in his service. Allow your spirit to be with us. Lord, help us to understand that we can't live without you. Every time we desire to be good, you desire to bless us. We need you more now than ever before. I ask you to forgive all our sins and shortcomings. Strengthen us where we can use our own more like you. Everything we do. Father God, in the name of your Son Jesus, we ask that you bless our pastor. Continue to give him words of wisdom. We ask that you strengthen us where we can go and pull it out. We ask that you guide and keep us. Let us understand that we need you more now than ever. Father, help us. We need you. We need you to help us. Bless our families. Bless them on the road to and forward. Safe from everything going on. Yes, we bless Mr. Martin. Continue to bless the people. Bless the sick in this church family. Help us to understand that it's nothing we do that's not done for your good. Help us to be more mindful of you in everything that we do, Lord. We ask that you will bless us with this service. Never forget our sight. Keep us in your care. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Really listen.
Uh-huh. Try to read my Bible like a whole year. So then when you was telling me, I was like, oh, so something I can actually have to feed that.